So I will call the meeting to order. And Braden, do you want to take roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Freeman, Commissioner Silvas,
Here.
Commissioner Diana, Commissioner Williams. Thank you.
Thank you, there's a quorum. The first item on our agenda is to review and approve the minutes of our previous meeting. Those were provided in your packet. That was the meeting on November 22nd. That meeting also includes our approval of the public hearing, which was held in October. So do we have a motion for approval of the minutes from November 22nd?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Patty. Is there a second? Thank you, Sean. Is there discussion? So I'll call the question. All in favor of approving the minutes as written from Tuesday, November 22nd? Say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and the motion carries, so we have approved the minutes from our November 22nd meeting. Next item on our agenda is for me to ask if there are any additions to the agenda. Should we do that at this point, or should we do it? We'll just have a moment of silence for Sean Green, Coach Green, who was on the commission and died recently. Good suggestion, Patty, thank you. Is there any public input? There's no one here to provide public input, but did the staff receive any public input from mail or email?
No, we did not.
And that takes us to presentations, including the staff report.
Thank you. So the first item on the staff report, I'll actually give over to Sheila, the Urbana Home Consortium Project Year 2022 CHOTO agreements.
We put out the application to the two CHOTOs that exist, First Followers as well as Habitat for Humanity. We asked that the applications be submitted to us by January 9th. They are to submit CHOTO operating if they're requesting any operating money, as well as project. And then we certify, for those of you that are new, we certify the CHOTO every year prior to funding. So we have received First Followers. I'm sure we'll receive Habitats by the end of the week, and we'll bring those agreements to you to our normal meeting in January.
The next item is the annual action plan timeline reminder. At our January meeting, which will be in 2 weeks, we will be holding a public hearing on the annual action plan like we do every year, and that's to gain public feedback on needs in the community and how we can use our CDBG and home funding to address those needs. So we will be sending out the notice for that public hearing. That will be the first of several that we will be holding beginning in January. And then, again, if anyone has information about local community groups or neighborhood associations that have meetings, please feel free to let us know. We like to, take our plan on the road and take it to different community groups to get feedback. We do find that we get more feedback when we go to other group meetings that are already, on the calendar. So we would appreciate that if you have any feedback or contact information for us. The next item is we are looking for new community development commissioners. We unfortunately lost Commissioner Green, who was a really wonderful member of our commission. He was very engaged and active, and we're sad to lose him. So we are looking for new members. So if any of you know anyone who is an Urbana resident, they do need to be a resident of Urbana who would like to serve, please send us their contact information.
We are supposed to be staffed at 9 or, have 9 members. We've brought up in the past having 7, and maybe this is a time to rethink that as well. Do we want to change the membership to 7, which means we would just need to change our bylaws? Sure. Not since I've been here. It's been a long time since there's been 9 members.
It's, in my experience, always been a challenge to get that many active members here, and so we've kind of informally had 7 as a goal. I think it has implications for the quorum as well, that maybe it would be more effective for us to officially have 7 members, and then the quorum would be a little easier to stuck and not having a quorum, which was a risk when we had 9. Some of whom weren't able to participate.
And I will reach back out to the Habitat families to see if any of them are interested. I did reach out maybe a year ago, and 2 were interested, but then one had a conflict and the other one just hasn't responded yet. But it would be nice to get somebody that understands the impact of the funds in the community. Maybe they won't be able to vote on a particular topic if there's a conflict, but they could at least help guide us as we go.
And I don't know, Deshawn, if you were here for the conversation we had about whether or not we should invite people who are in the target area. In the past, we've done that, and then there were occasions where something was going to happen in their area, and they had to recuse themselves from a vote, but it was never a problem. We did have that discussion. There was a little concern about it, but I don't think it would be a problem.
And I did follow up with HUD on that, and they said as long as they're not voting, like if I was applying and I lived in the King Park neighborhood, I couldn't vote on approving my application, but you guys don't get to that level of detail. You're more the broader policy discussion. So I think that would be fine to have someone in the targeted neighborhoods. They could vote like on an infrastructure project because it serves the whole neighborhood, but they couldn't vote on getting rehab done to their home.
Like Commissioner Salam, he was involved with First Followers, and he would just recuse himself back when he was on the commission, and that's fine. Again, I think we think it's good to have people who have had the impact of the funding, and that experience. And then if anything ever comes up, just to have them recuse themselves. So we don't think it's too big of a time commitment. So, in terms of outreach to people who might be interested, we just get a brief bio of them and, that their experience in the community. But yeah, we would like to aim for that target of 7, and then also look into possibly changing the bylaws from 9 to 7 if possible.
And so what is the process of changing the bylaws from 9 to 7?
We would just bring it to you for review and approval, and you guys would do it.
The commission would vote on it, and then the council approves it, or?
I don't think so. I think it's just you, because it's governing your body.
Okay.
Yeah. We would make it a part of our documents to HUD to show that you'd made the amendment, but there's really not a big conflict.
Do you think that we should add that to the agenda next time and then just have a discussion and prepare for it?
Sure.
Okay. I think we're at that point.
Thank you. So I will add to the next meeting's agenda a discussion about amending the bylaws from 9 members to 7 members. Thank you. And then the only other thing I have is just some happy news. We will be having a new grant staff member joining us beginning next week. So he'll be filling my old role, community development specialist. So we are excited about that, and there'll be a new face joining us. Yeah, his name is Jeremy Ryder. He's a recent graduate of University of Illinois. So we've got a lot of projects and exciting things that we'll be able to get started on. So,
and those of you that are new to the commission, this was a position that was approved by council in this year's budget, because our department, or our division, Braden and I's division, is going to be handling most grants throughout the city. So like, I'm working on one now with ILEAS and Public Works, and they're through the state of Illinois. So this position will help us keep moving those kind of things forward.
And that concludes the staff report. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion about the staff report? Next on our agenda is unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to come before the commission this evening?
No, not tonight.
And then new business. We have 2 items under new business.
I'm going to ask that this first item, item A, Urbana Home Consortium item, is moved to the next meeting's agenda.
Okay. And that would be our meeting in January
I should have been prepared for
Fourth?
that. The 24th.
24th.
January 24th at
Okay.
6 p.m. So we'll move that item to that meeting. So the next item is the Housing and Homeless Innovations funding recommendations. So I brought an update to all of you back in November, it feels like a long time ago, about the Housing and Homeless Innovations Consolidated Grant Program, which is abbreviated HHI. So this program is a collaboration between Urbana and also the City of Champaign Neighborhood Services staff, and it was a way to pool some different resources in the community into one grant pot so that local agencies, didn't have to apply to 6 different grant programs. They could just submit one application and then, receive funding that way. So we are bringing before you tonight the funding recommendations that will be funded through the City of Urbana's pot of funding. There are separate agreements that will be going to Champaign that Champaign will be funding. So all of you will just be addressing the Urbana funding recommendations, and then Champaign will be handling their pot separately. So the funding recommendations can be found in attachment 1 of the memo that I submitted, and then there's greater detail about each program in attachment 2, so you can refer to those if you have any additional questions. So the total pot of funding that I mentioned, kind of this shared pot between Champaign and Urbana, you can see the breakdown there. The total came to just a little over $5.3 million, and the Urbana portion of that came from our regular Urbana Home Consortium allocation, as well as Urbana Home ARP funding. And then you can see there's 2 pots of Champaign funding as well for that total of $5.3 million. So as I mentioned in my last update back in November, the application period ran from November 4th through December 12th. And when applications closed on the 12th, staff from both cities, the City of Urbana and then the City of Champaign Neighborhood Services, met to evaluate the applications, determine appropriate sources of funding to support the programs, and then divide them up amongst each city. So that process, that evaluation process, took place from December 12th through December 16th. And so what you see tonight, those funding recommendations came out of that process. So the total amount that you'll see in attachment 1, this city is currently recommending a little over $1.4 million in funding to support the programs that you see on the chart. And again, these programs specifically target homeless services, shelter, and also housing needs in the community. So the step for the commission tonight is to forward the proposed recommendations to City Council with a recommendation for approval, to forward the recommendations with changes to City Council with a recommendation for approval, or to not recommend approval of the proposed funding recommendations. So that's a quick summary. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about this.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Based
Patty, do you have your mic on?
Hello, there it is. Okay. So yeah, my question is, can we have more of an itemized list of what the budget is for each of these things? So like, the first one, Champaign County Regional Planning Commission, I see a description of the program, but like this $148,000 is to pay for a salary of a person, or is it buying, stuff, or like what is that one for? Yeah, were they required to give you a breakdown of expenses as part of the process?
Yeah, so it's to support the case management of that program, which would be staff time. So this is a program that they currently operate, but it's expanding the capacity of the program, which is what that funding goes toward. I don't have the itemized budget in front of me, but I'd be happy to share that if you would like. But this is the program that, again, they're operating and looking to expand the number of clients that they can serve.
So I guess similarly, Cunningham Township's looking to use program funding as well. And then a couple of other ones are looking to hire a person to have expanded capacity. And then finally, the North Point Development Corporation wants to actually build affordable housing, which sounds awesome. Do you happen to know like the scope of that whole project? So it's recommended here that we provide $500K, and do you know what the total dollar amount is for the whole thing?
About 18 million.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, they are a partnership. I think we brought the intergovernmental agreement back in October.
Oh, yeah. that's
That we have with the Housing Authority. So we'll be doing this project in conjunction with them. North Point has applied for state of Illinois tax credits, and having funding from the city will help make their application stronger. They get more points from it. Plus,
Sure.
it's badly needed. So the end is we'll have hopefully 44 to 48 affordable housing units through this project.
Okay, great.
And then I know talking about supportive services, the Home ARP allows us to have flexibility to fund supportive services, which is kind of nice. That's not what we normally get to do with that pot of money. CDBG, there's always a cap that limits who we can help, and we'd like to help more. So this is that opportunity to do that.
And to go to your question about Cunningham Township, so as you see there, the funding to go toward a 6-year, I don't want to call it a pilot, but essentially they are putting together different funding sources to support 6 years of running this program. So that would be everything from that staff time to supplies to different aspects of supporting the program for between the years 2022 and 2026.
I see. Okay, great, thank you.
So I have a question about the North Point development. It's at 1001 South Learman. Is that where buildings were torn down? So it's just south of Washington?
Yes. So it's where the Learman Neighborhood Gardens were. The
Oh.
gardens, not-for-profit,
Yeah.
kind of has fallen apart. The property was purchased in 2012 with CDBG funding, always with the thought to put in affordable housing, and it says that in the resolution at the time we purchased, as well as each year when we did an annual lease with the garden, it said that. So when the garden kind of fell apart in July through no fault of the cities, they just had some turnover and it kind of fell apart. We were approached about that same time from 2 separate developers about doing a tax credit project there, and then kind of behind where the old Monocles was, where they tore down that housing. And so it seemed like a good time to move forward with it. This group, North Point, has put in a preliminary application to the state of Illinois, and they've received a conditional approval letter to move on to the next step. So it doesn't mean they're 100% funded, but that's a good sign that they got the conditional approval. The state has been looking at trying to fund projects downstate. So the fact that they're reaching out to developers to look at this area and developers have reached out to us is a good thing too.
So I know that this is off topic, but
No.
when those developers submit plans, how much investment can they make in energy conservation strategies for those dwellings, those living units?
I think they will make as much as they can afford to make. It's expensive to do, which is why they need all these pots of money. But that is a question that we can ask him to address. This is kind of the first steps of this process because we are investing this money and maybe some CDBG money too. And so they'll have to come back before you guys to get approval to transfer the land and then to invest in the project. So that's a good question to ask, is what energy efficiency. But the preliminary plan is just that, it's just preliminary. Once they get approved for financing through the state, they will go to the neighborhood and have neighborhood meetings and try to get input. We'll ask that they present to you, we'll ask that they present to council, just to try to have that inclusive discussion.
When we funded this type of development in the past, there was always this trade-off of investing more at the building phase, which would then reduce energy costs for the people living there. But it was we could never get that reflected in an increased investment in the building.
Yeah. Yeah, this would be a good site to have solar panels because they're both wide open spaces. So I have a call into the developer and I will ask him that because even if he can't provide that with the pots of money he's after, there's a lot of money for those type of solar projects.
And it reduces the cost of living for the people who actually live there.
Right.
And so the payback format that they use can't be adjusted to, say, okay, you're going to pay a little bit more for the building, but you're going to pay a lot less for energy. It just has.
Yep, we will ask.
So any more questions about these projects? We need to make a recommendation. Staff has provided us with 3 options. Is there a motion for one of those options?
I move to go forward with option number 1, to forward these recommendations to the City of Urbana's Committee of the Whole.
Thank
With a
you.
recommendation for approval.
Is there a second? Thank you. Any further discussion on making the recommendation that we forward the proposed funding recommendations to the City of Urbana Committee of the Whole with a recommendation for approval? No more discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. So we will forward the proposed funding recommendation to the City of Urbana Committee of the Whole with a recommendation for approval.
And I'd just like to say the total amount that we had available was $5.3 million. We have right at $3 million in request. So once this process is done of getting the grant agreements out between Champaign and Urbana, because we feel like that's most important right now is to get the funding to the agencies that need it, we may be coming back to you with another proposal on how we can use this joint funding in the future. It may be that we go our separate ways. It may be that we come back together. I don't know. But right now we are really just focusing on that piece of it.
Sense. Well, having exhausted our agenda for this evening, we are adjourned. Thank you.